Welcome to the channel, guys. This is the very first episode of Ghost Gambles and Brandie Bets. I've already messed up the name. I'll work on it though. So introducing you to our co-host. Welcome, Brandie.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's going to be a lot of fun. Going to kind of get into several things tonight. We'll go over the bigger games first and kind of see what we're both thinking on them. And so with that being said, Brandie, when you think about Texas traveling to Michigan and a 7.5 point spread, and just heads up, guys, these are not our favorite plays for the week. We're just talking about the bigger games that everybody does want somewhat of an opinion on. And so going back to you, Brandie, when you think of that Texas going to Michigan and the 7.5 point spread, what are your initial thoughts?
Yeah, I was kind of surprised that this line was as long as it was. With it being such like a marquee matchup, Texas being favored by more than a touchdown on the road, but makes sense with how vanilla Michigan's offense looked last week against Fresno State. Obviously, they don't have Jim Harbaugh anymore, and their star quarterback's gone to the NFL now too. So it's kind of tough to know if Michigan was like hiding some of their cards, maybe waiting for this game. Like, not sure if maybe they didn't show us their full offensive playbook because they wanted to save that, knowing they were playing Texas the week after. On the flip side, Texas like looked amazing against Colorado State, which Colorado State isn't just some like, random nobody team. Like they're, a decent team in a somewhat okay conference. So
returned some players last year or for this year.
Yeah, and I mean, the offense is clicking on all cylinders, as was the defense for Texas in that game. It's really hard after some of these games in week one to not overreact. But I think both Vegas and the public both overreact after week one. It's just figuring out which ones are good lines. But I mean, I definitely favor Texas more here. But the Big House is a really tough place to play. So going on the road's never easy, especially against a team like Michigan. But it's just hard to kind of back this team because, like, how does Michigan move the ball against Texas? I think that's the biggest question is their offense isn't what their offense was last year. Their defense isn't bad. But, yeah, I don't know. This one's a tough one because I think Michigan is we just didn't get much out of them, and there wasn't much to take away other than the fact that, like, they are definitely not the team that they were last year. And they're just kind of their offense was boring and they barely scraped away against kind of a poorer team than who Texas played. So, or probably the same level as Colorado State maybe, but yeah.
To Michigan's credit, Fresno State's, I mean, they're expected to compete in that conference. So, I mean, good for them. But at the same time, yeah, I feel like we got nothing from Michigan really. Offensive line play wasn't impressive. Passing game wasn't impressive. Defense, like you said, the defense is still good. They've still recruited well on defense, even though they haven't really crushed it in recruiting the last few years. But it's still, like you said, it's at the Big House, and I'm confident in Texas. I'm pretty biased. I have the Longhorn tattooed right here on my chest, but I mean, I feel good about our team traveling up there. I feel good about the defense. I know there's a lot of people concerned about our defense coming into the season. There's a lot of turnover, but in particular on the defensive line, and I liked what I saw. We gave up a couple of running plays early in the game, but I mean, these are new bodies, and like you're saying, holding some cards. We're playing it safe, and we just kind of let our athletes be athletes in the first week. Everything was kind of base and didn't really do too much. But yeah, so I mean, I would just by what we saw in week one, like naturally everybody leans Texas, right? Like, I mean, yes, 7.5, like you said, is a big spread on this game, but I mean, it's really hard not to like, okay, how does Michigan score, like you, Brandie, said? And we know Texas can score. And they went on the road last year in Tuscaloosa, very similar offensive line, same quarterback, and, put up mid-30s. And so if Texas were to score 30, I mean, it's hard to think Michigan covers, in my opinion. I'm also a little biased. So I don't know. It's a tough game to handicap. Neither of us have this game on our sheet that we're giving out later on. If I had to, I will make my official prediction right now. I'm going to say 30-16 Texas, so that's an easy cover. But at the same time, I'm believing in all of the good things for our Horns. I'm trusting that we'll score in the red zone, that we won't go turn the ball over 2-3 times. That we'll, we're always good in the kicking game. That we'll be good in the kicking game in a tough environment, which is a huge, aspect of traveling. Got to be good in special teams. And with Coach Banks, I think, we'll show up there. And so with Michigan's quarterback play and Texas' ability, hopefully ability to stop Donovan Edwards and the run game for Michigan, I lean towards the cover. Now, that would be my official prediction. Do you care to make one on this game?
I would say Texas to cover as well. I think this is going to be the start of a potential Heisman campaign for Quinn Ewers too, because he looked so great in that first game, and he has more experience under him now. And yeah, I definitely lean Texas in this game. It's weird being 11 a.m. kickoff. Weird stuff happens in those 11 a.m. games, but I just don't think Michigan has the firepower to keep up with what Texas has on offense.
It's hard to see it, on paper, and then even with what we saw with our eyes on Saturday, it's really hard to believe that. But at the same time, just a battered horn in me, a little bit of that comes out, and I'm like, okay, we can find a way to mess this up. If Michigan goes and forces 3 turnovers, if they go and hold Texas to, maybe if we have 5 or 6 red zone trips and we only get, 2 scores out of them, then yeah, I can see Michigan finding a way to win that game. But I still think more than that would have to go their way. Moving on, we'll go to another big game. I know we'll both talk about this game a little bit later. I think it's kind of like an underrated game just because of Texas and Michigan and in the way that North Carolina State looked last week. But you have Tennessee traveling to North Carolina State and a pretty big game there. Coming into the season, I feel like it was talked about a ton. But after last week with Tennessee looking as good as they did and just what I think they scored 69 or 70. What are your thoughts? It's kind of a big spread, and then it seems to be like a lot of money is poured in on Tennessee. And you don't have to give me a pick or anything, but when you see that spread, you see what you saw last week and was North Carolina State struggling with Western Carolina. What are you thinking?
Yeah, so this is actually one of the games that is on my sheet for like what I consider one of my best bets this week. So I got it at 7.5 earlier this week. I saw the line and already bet it. So I love Tennessee in this game. Somebody else like on the talks of Heisman campaigns, even though he's a freshman this year, or this really is his first year starting, Nico, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name because I can't.
I've been working like syllable by syllable trying to get one down, and I've got the first one down, but that's it. Go ahead.
Yeah, so Nico looked, they played UTC. They played UT Chattanooga, so take some of these, you can't really do much deep analysis when that's who they played, but he was clicking on all cylinders. Their offense was clicking on all cylinders. Really right now, from what we can tell after week 1, Tennessee's only weakness is their secondary on the defensive side of the ball. Whereas NC State beat Western Carolina 38-21. And really that score kind of even looks a little bit better than when I rewatched the game, I was like, this score kind of looks a little better than what NC State actually played because they pulled away late in that game. And they do have a decent quarterback. Grayson McCall transferred from Coastal Carolina there. But I think the key for NC State, if they want to even make this a game, is to try to run the ball through Kevin Concepcion. And I don't think that they're going to be able to do that with Tennessee's defensive line. I think Tennessee has a sneaky good defensive line that's not really being talked about a lot right now. Because whenever you talk about Tennessee's defense, everyone just talks about kind of how weak the secondary is. But I think that they have a sneaky good defensive line that's going to end up helping them out a ton in this game. And I just don't think that NC State's defense has enough to be able to stop Nico and that fire offense. They lost probably their 2 best defensive linemen and their 2 best linebackers that they had on their team last year, because NC State did have a really good defense last year, and their head
front
coach
7 was loaded. Yep.
Yeah, so they lost 2 of those like really great guys on that front 7, and then also lost 2 pretty good linebackers too. And you kind of saw that in the game against Western Carolina. And so I just think that even though this game was Raleigh, it's at the Panthers Stadium, so it's technically a neutral site game. One, I think that's almost like a disadvantage for NC State unless it would have like comparatively if it would have been at home for them.
I agree.
Because that's really not a far travel for Tennessee fans. And I think I still think there's going to be more NC State fans there, but I don't think that there's going to be like a massive discrepancy to give this like kind of neutral site game an advantage to the state of the team that's being played in. So I think Tennessee's fans are going to show up to this game. Just because it's not really that far from Tennessee and Knoxville in general. And two, like, I think that this Tennessee team is pretty good, especially their offense. And I actually think we're going to have a really good coaching matchup too, because Josh Heupel is a really good offensive-minded coach, and then NC State's head coach is a really good defensive-minded head coach. So yeah, I don't know. I just think that 7.5 may seem like a lot of points, but with it being a neutral site game and with how poor NC State looked last week, this line definitely makes a lot of sense to me. It doesn't surprise me at all. And maybe this is me buying into a little bit of an overreaction for how great Tennessee's offense looked against last week against UTC and how bad NC State looked against Western Carolina. But I just think that NC State lost too much on their defense, and I don't know if they're gonna have it in them to be able to stop that offense quite yet, especially not this early in the season.
It definitely feels like a lot of people out there agree with you. Everybody, I think, kind of fell in love with Nico last week. I mean, he's made it look really, really easy. I think their defensive line is actually pretty dang good. I like the defense as a whole. Obviously, watching North Carolina State, it was hard to be inspired by much of that performance. Kind of an onslaught in the fourth quarter, which you would expect anyways. When you're playing Western Carolina, you just wouldn't expect those first three quarters. You did say that North Carolina State's head coach, Dave Doran's a defensive mind. And because of that, plus the fact that that line has flown all the way to 10 full points now.
It's at 10. Oh, my gosh. I didn't realize that.
It's flown to 10. I am writing down North Carolina State as my favorite play of the week. I know that we probably meant to do this later, but we're doing it. I love the first pick that we actually have on our sheet. We're disagreeing. And so for my reasoning is I think it's going to be a big bounce back effort for North Carolina State. Obviously, if they show up and play like they did against Western Carolina, they probably lose by 50. So I guess it's not the 66 that UTC lost by last week. But yeah, I really do think that it's a prideful bunch that had high expectations for themselves coming into the year. And I'm chalking up week one as, hey, we're playing Tennessee in week two. We're trying to get through this healthy. We're not tipping our hand in any form whatsoever. I have a feeling mostly, and which is probably bad. And
sometimes betting feelings are worth it.
Well, we have to be honest with the viewers, and we'll get into that in one moment, and we'll let them make their own assessment. But I really like North Carolina State in this game. I almost want to sit here and say out loud that I think North Carolina State wins this game. I'm not going to do it, but I think we see for sure a one-score game, and it comes down to the end. Now, I could very easily be wrong. Josh Heupel, like you said, you're talking about if they're not able to run the ball, if North Carolina State cannot run the ball whatsoever, then they're going to get pummeled because you're going to have to try and keep up with Nico and those wide receivers for 60 minutes, and it's not going to go well. It's the way that the game works. You better be able to move the ball if you're Grayson McCall in North Carolina State. Shout out Garrett Tujay, the offensive line coach. They're going to show up with an attitude. They're going to move the ball on the ground. And that's why, for me, I'm rolling North Carolina State plus 10. I mean, we can both win here, which is cool.
I know. If you grab Tennessee when it opened at 7.5, I don't know if I would bet Tennessee up to -10 though. If you can get it in between 7.5 and 9.5. then yes, but I would not. I don't know if I would take it at 10. So there is a chance we can both win here in middle. So if you can find a line, though, I would say Tennessee up to 9.5 on my side.
I like it. I mean, we have a chance to look incredibly sharp here with the first official pick that we've ever given out on this channel. And
I know.
Yeah, but to be sharp, you got to take that. If you like the Tennessee side, you would have had to done so on the 7.5 very, very early. And I mean, I don't think that line stays at 10. I would assume, like you're kind of saying, it might tick down 9.5, maybe even 9 come kickoff. But we'll see. I know everybody loves the balls right now. They're easy to love. With that being said, I have said North Carolina State plus 10. Brandie likes Tennessee minus 7.5. We are in a big Twitter pick'em group together, ran by yours truly, and week one we had very opposite end of the spectrum results. Brandie put out a pretty healthy 15-10, 25 picks against the spread. I mean, 15-10 is solid. I did not go 15-10. I didn't even go 10-15. Out of 56 competitors, I am solo 53rd at 8-17. So we have to include that caveat that whatever you hear so far in the early college football season, Brandie knows ball a lot better than Ghost. That's just, the numbers don't lie. But we're back. We're here to come back with a vengeance. We're not concede. We're not going to quit. And so when we talk about 53rd out of 56, it's just motivation is all that is. We eat, sleep, and breathe this group now, and it's our everything, and we'll climb the standings. But all right, moving on from that, let's go. Tell me the second game, if you would, that you have on your sheet, and let's talk a little about that one.
Yeah, the second game I have Iowa minus 2.5, and I did look to make sure. I just looked at the lines now, and you can get it at 2.5 on DraftKings and 3 on FanDuel, which basically the same thing. So yeah, I have Iowa minus 2.5 against Iowa State. I really like this just like general rivalry across all sports. I always love watching Iowa and Iowa State in basketball and in football and other sports too. So wrestling's
it's a
really
great
big.
Rivalry.
Yeah, wrestling's really big with that rivalry there too. So it's sometimes fun to keep up with. But Iowa's won like 8 of the last 10 of these matchups. But the last 6 were all decided by 10 points or less. So they have been relatively close games, which kind of makes sense. But last week, and I'm hoping this is an overreaction to Iowa's new offensive coordinator, Tim Lester, coming in and like totally revamping their offense. It was 6-0 last week against Illinois State. And then they ended up winning, I think, like 40-0 or something like that. But Iowa's starting running back was out the first half of the game. So it doesn't tell the full story for the first half there. So I really like Iowa here. And I think the reason why I don't like Iowa State is because one of their star players on defense is out, linebacker Caleb Bacon. So he's out for them. And North Dakota State ran for 100 and sorry, that's my dog. Ran
likes to pick.
Yeah, she does. So North Dakota State ran for like 176 yards against Iowa State, and I think Iowa has a pretty decent running game. And so I don't know. I just really like Iowa in this spot here. The fact that Iowa has one of the best defenses in the country. They're really great at forcing turnovers. I think Iowa State has a decent quarterback in Rocco, and they have some decent offensive skill players. Like, they're not bad, but Iowa State's defense just isn't on the level that Iowa's defense is on. And with an improved offense for Iowa, I just think that this line is so short. They're basically saying these teams are the same. Like, given home field advantage, Iowa's the favorite. So they're basically saying that these teams are the same, and I just don't think that they are. So I think Iowa's a lot better than Iowa State, mainly because of Iowa's defense, but they're just an improved team overall, especially too with the quarterback that Iowa has in this year too. So
I'm fully with you on this. I love Iowa minus 2.5. I would, even if you can't get it at 2.5 and you have to take 3, you don't want to buy half a point or mess with that at all. I love it. I think that they're a great add to a couple parlays and whatever you want to do. I think that offense, as you said, they've always been able to run the football a little bit. I mean, if they score on offense, traditionally it's been by moving the ball on the ground. But it was the way that they attacked last week. It was a whole different setup. They threw the ball down the field, not just the tight ends, but the wide receivers. They attacked vertically, and that is something that you haven't seen out of Iowa. And so, coupled with a good defense, I don't think there's a way that Iowa State matches the points. I don't. I love Iowa to win that game. Really like them to cover. I think that's a fantastic pick for Brandie's second official pick on the card. Iowa minus 2.5. It just, I could see them putting up, 27 or 30. They look that good to me. Concept wise, it was beautiful. Now, You still have to go up and play. You know, Matt Campbell always has good defenses over there. They know what they're doing. So we'll see. But my second pick on my card, we've got the Arkansas, the Oklahoma State, the over 62.5. I really think that Taylor Green and Arkansas, obviously, you know, they have 10 possessions in that football game. They scored 10 times. Bobby Petrino's back in town. And to keep up with Oklahoma State in this game, I think they're going to have to score the football pretty often. And so tempo-wise, I think it'll be an up-tempo on their side. I think that they know that to win, they'll have to get in a shootout, in my opinion. I don't know about Bowman at Oklahoma State, but I do know that he has Ollie Gordon and Mike Gundy. And those two cats alone will take him a long ways, or they should. And that's just – I don't see Arkansas slowing down Oklahoma State very much, to be honest. I have Oklahoma State winning over Arkansas 38-30. Puts it 5.5 points clear of the over. Also, if you're interested in the spread on that game, that's an Oklahoma State cover, but just barely. Is that correct? Is it 7.5 still, or what?
I think it is still 7.5.
Okay, I have to say I haven't looked at that one since this morning, but I do like that over a lot. I think that you'll see a lot of possessions and a lot of big plays. I think Taylor Green for Arkansas, he ran for over 100 yards, threw a couple touchdown passes. I like them to be able to move the ball to Oklahoma State. We just need them to put it in the end zone, and I think that over gets there pretty easily. Oklahoma State's going to score the ball, in my opinion. Gundy, he's been looking for this game, I guarantee it. And then Ollie Gordon's a dog. Just how it goes. Think I'm crazy, Brandie, or you think that one's all right? What are your thoughts?
Well, I have a soft spot for the defensive coordinator at Arkansas because I worked under him when he was the linebackers coach at Auburn when I was a student recruiter. So that's Travis Williams. No, it's okay. You're fine. I think so I did watch a little bit of Arkansas's game, just the replay. Since I was out of the country, I kind of picked and chose bits and pieces of certain games to watch. And I was actually kind of surprised by Arkansas's offense. It was better, kind of. I mean, they didn't play like they played like a nobody team, so it was still kind of hard to judge. But I thought that they played the nobody team better than what I was expecting them, if that makes sense. They've gotten a lot of shit this offseason, Arkansas has. Like, there's been no hype around them at all in any kind of way. And I think that I'm not saying they're going to win a lot of games this season because I still don't think that they'll win a ton of games. But I do think that their offense is a little bit better than what we were kind of led to believe this offseason. And I actually think their defense is a little better than what we were led to believe. Enough to help with the over, or enough to prevent the over. I don't think so. I like the over pick. In our Pick'em League, I did pick Arkansas, which is kind of chalky, picking a underdog SEC team on the road. But
I can see it.
I'm not betting on that game. I just picked it in our Pick'em League. But I do like where you have the over at. Because like you said, Ollie Gordon's a dog. I think that Oklahoma State and Arkansas are both going to just run the score up. And I think the winner of the game is going to be who gets the ball in the last possession, because I just think that nobody's going to be able to stop the other team. So I like the over. I think that's a good pick.
Always good to have some backup, So yeah, so pick number 2 for me. I've locked in Arkansas, Oklahoma State over 62.5. Let's hope for 85. Make it easy. All right, Miss Brandie. Do you have any more on the card? We didn't talk about a total number, but what's the next one you have?
Yeah, so this one I'm hoping is not an overreaction to last week, and I don't think that it is. I think this is just too many points for a G5 team that has notoriously given Power 5 teams trouble, and that's App State plus 17.5 on the road at Clemson. 3 scores to me, it's just too much. So Clemson, Georgia last week, I think Clemson's going to be a little bit banged up from having to play such a tough defense in Georgia. All that to say, their front 7 has a huge advantage over App State still. Clemson's defense definitely hasn't taken a step back by any means. Georgia's just, I think, on a different level from a talent level wise. And just all in all, in a different level. But App State actually has like a pretty decent quarterback this year in Joey Aguilar. And they actually have some like sneaky good offensive skill players too for the type of program that they are. So I think the key here is going to be, can App State stop Clemson's run game? And I think that this is going to be a game where it's going to come down, like it's going to be like, oh wow, at halftime it's like 7-3 Clemson or something like that.
Yeah.
And so to me, I think 3 scores is just way too much for a team that's going to be banged up after playing one of the best teams in the country last week. And especially against kind of like a trap team type of game, like App State to me is a team that could potentially vie for that G5 playoff spot. So I don't know. They're not going to be able to run inside against Clemson, but I don't think that they're going to need to do that to be able to move the ball, because I think that they have some guys in their wide receiver room that can run downfield. So
Do you, the line's at 17.5 now?
yeah, it should be. Yes. Yeah.
Do you know what it opened at by chance?
I can look that up really quick.
I'm just curious because I believe a couple seasons ago, App State opened as a 19-point dog, closed with 17.5 points, and then they went into College Station, Texas, and beat the 6th-ranked Texas A&M Aggies. I
remember that.
I'm a history guy, and so just curious, could be see round 2.
Let me see what this opened at and how much movement there's been.
I do like that. You cut me off whenever when you get the number, but I like that. Clemson to come out and be potentially demoralized after just getting dog walked there by Georgia. And I mean, that's got to be somewhat deflating for the program. You don't get to wake up and turn around and play another, big opponent or even a conference opponent. You get to play feisty Appalachian State. And so I like the 17.5 there. I don't have any concern with that play. That's a game where curious, like you said, it could easily be a 1-score game at halftime. Wouldn't be surprised to see late third quarter, early fourth, and it's still a 1-score game, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it hasn't really had any movement. So 17.5 is around, where it's stayed at. It's actually at plus 17 now. So that's really the only movement that it's had has really been today by 0.5 a point. So also like Clemson definitely has a great defensive line, but App State has actually like a pretty decent offensive line, much improved from what it was last year. So even though Clemson definitely has the advantage there, I think that it's not as much as it may be besides just normal talent advantage in general from the types of programs that they are.
Right.
So yeah.
Well, that's the thing with Clemson is like if they do recruit any particular position group well, it's the defensive line. They've had so many big, 4 and even 5-star recruits over there. But, you still have to develop them. And the way they looked against Georgia, I'm not saying that they're not being developed. I'm not saying that Clemson fans need to have major concern. I'm not as high on their defensive line at the moment as most people. That was atrocious the other day. And hey, they could easily, for your sake, I'm hoping they do not, and for our viewers' sake, that decide to tell Brandie on Appalachian State plus 17.5. They could. That's a good opportunity for them to go show who they are for that defensive line, because it's like Brandie said, it's a better than average offensive line for App State, and so that'll be a good test for Clemson. I need to see something out of them. That was rough. It really was. For my third pick, I'm going to roll with, and some viewers who have watched my prediction show in the past when I did all the conference champions and playoff predictions will say that I'm only doing this because I was so high on them during that show. I am taking Texas Tech. Texas Tech plus 1.5. Yes, they beat Abilene Christian by a point. I get it. I know that Brandie, if she had to take a side on this, she probably would not take Texas Tech, and I'll let her tell you why. But I am behind Texas Tech because I think that Joey McGuire will rally the troops. I think that offense is dang good. I really do. I think the offensive line's a lot better. You have receiving talent. Offense wasn't an issue last week. You scored mid-50s. You still only won by a point. So we've got to find out if Texas Tech can find a way to get any type of pass rush. If they do not get a pass rush against Washington State, then 1.5 is probably in the mud pretty quickly. And we'll have a good old shoot-off. Last point I'll make on Texas Tech, we're doing it for Mike Leach, baby. Mike Leach was Texas Tech's coach. He's that guy. They already went over there and whipped Mississippi State around when they had that matchup, I guess, in the bowl game. This is part 2. We're doing this for the Pirate. We're doing it for Coach Leach. I think that he would be proud of Texas Tech plus 1.5 this week. But Brandie will tell you why she doesn't agree.
Yeah, I was going to give out Washington State. I'll just put it on the money line. This line has bounced around all week. It's bounced around Texas Tech plus 1.5, Washington State plus 1.5, and just back and forth all week. Maybe it's a little bit of the Pirate since he coached at both. I think they're honoring him at the game too. There's I think I was reading something today about them. Yeah.
You have to, right? You got to do something.
Yeah. I don't know if I can back Texas Tech until I see their secondary improve. That was horrible last week against a
that was
horrible
supposed to
team.
be like, I mean, I know there was a question mark. I liked what they had at safety. I thought at safety they'd be okay. But yeah, go ahead. McIver absolutely ripped them up.
Yeah. So, and to be fair, Washington State's defense isn't anything to write home about either. I mean, Portland, when they played Portland and gave up 30 points, I think, to them. Yeah. Portland State. So they beat them 70-30. So I think this is, like you said, it's going to be a shootout for the Pirate. It kind of feels that way, but their quarterback did really well against a nobody team. But it's more of me just fading Texas Tech. Going to overtime with Abilene Christian is
powerhouse. Abilene Christian. Okay.
And Washington State too. Washington State kind of has something to prove too. They're not in really I don't really know what conference. Nobody really knows what's going on with what conference they're supposed to be in or whatever. And so they were really good last year with Cam Ward. And I think that they haven't really taken that big of a step back at quarterback. He was great, but their starting quarterback actually looked pretty decent against Portland State. And so this pick for me is more of a fade than Texas Tech than it is me buying into any Washington State stuff here. So
I'm just, similar to North Carolina State, I'm trying not to let my eyes deceive me from week 1 to week 2. And I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt for now. This can quickly. I picked Tech to go 10-2 and win the Big 12, and they almost lost to Abilene Christian at home. I didn't
realize you did that.
Yeah, I mean, I did. I felt like it's so easy to say Utah, and Tech has a really, really easy schedule. They fade K-State, they fade Utah. But yeah, so I don't want to go back down and have to think about sitting down and being like, oh yeah, they can actually win this conference when they were 3 yards away in regulation from winning outright, and ACU had to settle for a field goal. So I was rooting for ACU definitely. I mean, that would have been great hate watching. I think you may have another play on there. Do you have one more for us?
Yes. So I went back and forth between 2 different ones that I wanted to give out. So I'll tell you what they both were, but I'll tell you what I'm actually going with. So I went back and forth between Boise State, which the line's at plus 19.5 now. There's been a ton of money come in on Oregon. And then the other one that I went back and forth on too of adding was Tulane plus 9.5. But the official one that I want to give out is Boise State plus 19.5. I don't want to overreact too much to Oregon's week 1 performance against Idaho, but they didn't look good. Their offensive line was all over the place. You could really tell that they're missing their star center that left and went to the league. Dylan Gabriel actually played pretty decent. I don't think that their lack of playing and routing that team was because of him by any means, but you could just tell that they're missing Jackson Powers Johnson out there on the offensive line. Their pass protection wasn't ideal. They struggled on the interior. And Boise State has, in my opinion, a top 10 player in the country on their team. If you don't know who I'm talking about, that's Ashton Genty, and that's Boise State's running back. He went for 6 touchdowns, 267 yards against Georgia Southern on Saturday, and PFF has him ranked as their number 1 running back in the country right now, and has him being ranked at number 11 going in the NFL draft this year, which is number 11 overall, which is pretty good for a running back in the era that we're in now. So the only thing that does worry me about this is, one, am I overreacting to how Oregon performed in week 1? Because Oregon does have a very good defensive line still. They didn't really take a step back there. All 4 of their starters weigh at least, I think it was I was reading today, all 4 of their starters weigh at least 265 or 270 pounds on their defensive line. So they have some big boys in the trenches there, which isn't ideal when Boise State's best player is a running back. But even last year when Ashton Jitty played against really good defenses like UCLA, for example, he still put up some really great numbers. And so I just think that line is too much. Also, for a history lesson here, Boise State's 3-0 against Oregon all time. So they beat them in 07, 08, and then 2017. Not going to talk about who was the coach at Boise State in 2017 because he is my fan base's least favorite person. So, yeah.
He coached us too.
Yeah.
Not for very long, but he wasn't.
Yeah,
awesome
I remember you mentioned that. Yeah. I also think Oregon's wide receivers they haven't found their like long, explosive wide receiver this year yet. They're using kind of Tez Johnson as that guy, and I just don't think he's like really that. Like he wasn't that last year, and they're trying to use him as that this year, and something just wasn't working in that wide receiver core that was different than last year. Like I said, I don't think that was on Dylan Gabriel at all because I actually thought he played really well, but they just lacked offensive firepower that they had last year. And Boise State has like a pretty bad defense. Like I'll be honest, it's not great. And their quarterback, Maddox Madsen will have to play pretty well, especially with how good Oregon's defensive line is. But I think that they have enough firepower to stay in this game, and 19.5, 20.5, whatever it's at now, like that to me is just too long of a line for a team that has never lost to Oregon before. And Boise State's also one of like the top G5 teams favored for that last like final G5 playoff spot. Sure. And so there's actually pretty decent playoff contentions in this game right now because of the extended college football playoff with that last 12th spot being the G5 team. So this is actually a pretty big like state game for Boise State.
I like it. I think that I just didn't like what Oregon did against Idaho. I thought, there's a lot of room for improvement. Dylan Gabriel averaged just over 4 yards a toss. He did look good. But yeah, same thing, the same thoughts as you. It didn't really feel like they had that big play capability. And then, I mean, Idaho is going to be a good FCS team, so like give them props first. But that's a lot of points. And Boise State, you're talking about it every time I turn that game on, because in the pick'em I had Georgia Southern in the 12.5, and every time I would pull that game up to watch, I was leaving the Texas game. I would pull it up and I would just see Buddy running for 60, running for 40. And, I felt like he scored 10 times. And so I like that. Yeah. So I'm sure there's a part of them that probably does try to play ball control and run some clock. When you reference a bad defense, you don't want to have them out there on the field if, you can run a little extra clock and keep that game tight. So Boise State plus 19.5, plus 20, you said is depending on the spot, those two numbers?
Yeah, it's around plus 19.5, plus 20. I think some money's come in on Oregon and stuff. So I like, picking two G5 teams to cover long spreads this week, hoping it doesn't bite me.
Hey, I like it, especially with a guy that has, North Carolina State and Tech on the card so far. I'm a fan of your side. I'll go.
Look, Boise State has a not great secondary too, kind of like Texas Tech. Not as bad actually, but
and say Georgia Southern's a little bit better of opponent, than old ACU, and they only give up 45, not 54 or 55, whatever it was that Tech gave up. I have two more plays. I'll give you a quick rundown on each one. I have Buffalo plus 34.5 at Missouri. I think the Missouri passing game struggled a little bit last week. Luther Burden had, I think, 4 for 49, did have a touchdown. He's that guy. I get it. And he could easily have 200 this week because he's that guy. But I think that Buffalo's good enough to score a couple times on Missouri. And then with Boston College coming to town next week from Mizzou, I don't think that there's going to be any need to push the envelope and get really, really crazy. So in the second half, this is great for working on depth, getting guys in. And I don't see Missouri putting up another 51 spot because I think Buffalo will have a little more success running the ball and running some clock. Dual threat quarterback. I think that he gave Missouri fits a few years ago when they played on the ground, but Missouri's going to win the football game. It's never going to be in doubt. No struggles. I've got Missouri winning. 47-17. So Buffalo inside the number by 4.5. big spread though. I mean, it's 34.5, and like I said, I like that Boston College is coming to town next week from Missouri because they gotta have, after what they did at Florida State. I know Drink has got to have his eyes a little bit on them, and being ready for that game because that's another chance for you to play outside of conference and have a not the biggest win, but it's bigger than Buffalo being in town is what I'll say. And then my last choice, Coach Jeff Choate and the Nevada Wolfpack plus 1.5 against the same Georgia Southern Eagles we were talking about earlier. For a lot of the same reasons. They gave up everything to Boise State on the ground. Now, as we said, one of the best backs in the country, maybe the best back in the country. But, I mean, you don't fix run defense issues like that in 1 week. Coach Choate in Nevada lost to I love Coach Choate. He was in Austin before, so this is a little bit of bias in here, but they were very physical against SMU. They should have beaten SMU 2 weeks ago. They let them get off the hook. I mean,
and SMU was like 27.5-point favorites too. And,
yes.
Right? Like it was like a crazy long line too.
I have SMU going to the ACC championship. I was almost cooked with everything in the first week between SMU and Old Texas Tech. But Nevada had them basically dead to rights, and they didn't give that away. You have to credit SMU, but there was a lot of mistakes. The kick return was a turnover. There was another big play in the fourth quarter that just changed that game on its face very, very quickly. He's a great football coach. This is going to be a motivated team. I really, really, it's actually, if I had to pick in confidence, I would take this one right behind North Carolina State and then the Arkansas, Oklahoma State over. I think Nevada gets it done. It'll be a good football game, but I'm going to bank on Coach Choate culture that he's instilling up there in Reno. And then I'm hoping my guy Savion Red has a big game on the ground. So I've got Nevada plus 1.5 there when Georgia Southern comes to town. So is that all? Do you have any more, or is that your full card, ma'am?
Yeah, that's my full card. Like I said, I would have loved to give out Tulane plus 9.5. I just couldn't get there. Actually, the Troy head coach from last year, he's at Tulane now, and I think he's doing I think he did really well. Like they did good in their first game. Kansas State, I'm not sure how good Avery is yet at quarterback. And I think he's really good from a dual threat standpoint, but I think he has a lot of work to do in his passing game. But I'm not quite sure. If you watch John Summerall's press conference after Tulane's first game, which they looked good, he like tore into his team and was like, we have a lot we have to work on. And Absolutely. They do have a relatively tough schedule for their team coming up. And so maybe that's a good thing for them. I couldn't fully get behind it yet. So yeah, everything I've given out is all me so far. I see somebody in the chat said that they like BYU plus 10.5 against SMU, and I like that pick a lot.
I can't believe I didn't have the chat up here. I have the chat on every video. Didn't have it up here so everybody could see. My apologies. Wow, that's rough. There it is. Welcome, guys. Gage, Bryce, thank you for tuning in. My brother, ball knower, I'll tell you that. So I like it. I mean, I think that, your two big spreads in particular, it's not like, big sexy spreads in the biggest games, but I think you're finding great value right there. You're talking about a Clemson team that's got to be down a little bit, and then an Oregon team that just didn't look very good, and then Boise has got a great run game, so which only helps milk some clock, hope to limit possessions for Oregon and Dylan Gabriel. I'm a fan. You want to read off your four if you have them in front of you? I've got them written down right here if not.
Yes, I have Iowa minus 2.5. If you can get Tennessee at minus 7.5 or up to 9.5, I have that. And then I have App State plus 17.5 and Boise State plus 19.5. It might be at plus 20 now, which is not great because I definitely have just checked my bet slip and have it at plus 19.5. But Boise State plus 19.5.
I like it. Those were Brandie's first 4 official picks on this channel. I'm about it. If I had to pick a favorite, Brandie, I'm probably just all over that Iowa minus 2.5. I can't see Iowa State hanging. I really love that pick. I have 5 total. North Carolina State plus 10. So Brandie and I plan on sharpening the ever living hell out of that play and both winning.
Middling.
Go Vols by 8 right there, please. Arkansas State and Oklahoma State over 62.5, and the Taylor Green versus Ollie Gordon showdown. Texas Tech. Yes, Texas Tech, the same team that you saw last week, beat Abilene Christian by a point. I have them covering the 1.5 spread against Wazoo. Buffalo plus 34.5 because Missouri's got bigger fish to fry down the road and are still working a few things out. And then Nevada, shout out Coach Jeff Choate and the rest of the Longhorns that went up here with them. Love what they did in the opening week with SMU. Gave it away, but hey, they had 2 weeks to sit there and be pissed off about it, and then they get to take it out on the Georgia Southern team that lost a very hard game, well played game. Give them credit; they did cover, holler, but to Boise State. So those are my 5. Brandie's got 4. We've got 9 total plays for you. We'll be back next week, and not particularly on Thursday. We don't know. We'll let you know, but yeah, we'll see how we did. For those that tell, please gamble responsibly. Have some fun with it. Once Brandie wins, I need you to get in there and show some love and some comments because she knows her stuff. Okay. We'll be back. Thank you guys for all tuning in. Brandie, do you have anything else?
No, I'm all good.
Well, best of luck, everybody. We hope you cover. We hope you tell. And then if you don't, well, we're going to go 9-0. You just know that's how it works. That's how it goes.
Yeah, there we go.
Well, all right, guys. Thank you all very much. We'll see you later on the channel. I have 8 o'clock with former Texas quarterback Chance Mock, and that'll be in just a few minutes. So thank you for who tuned in tonight. We'll see you later down the road. Bye, guys.